All right, so as Nick mentioned, my name's Owen West. I'm Air Quality Scientist at Environment Southland, and today I'm going to be taking you through emission characterisation, interventions and community response in the face of health-related evidence. There's not a dedicated program of research as such, but follows the natural evolution of our research on air quality in Southland. And we'll look a little bit at some of the work completed by Environet Limited and also some of the source characterisation work completed by GNS Science. I'll then finish up talking about how that work is fed into our regional air plan review and how we are now using it to engage a little bit with the community through a pilot project we're doing with ESR. Cool, so to start off with some acknowledgements. First of all, we need to thank Dr. Emily Wilton of Environet Limited, who did much of the early emission inventory work and was also a key advisor throughout the regional air plan review. Thanks also to GNS Science, who completed the source characterisation work for us, and in particular Dr. Travis Unslett, Dr. Perry Davey and Dr. Bill Trompeter there. And our GNS very generously matched the funding we received from Envirolink, which leads us nicely into the next thank you, Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment, which administers the Envirolink Fund. And most recently, we've been working with ESR, so a big thank you to them, who have also matched the funding we've put forward for this pilot project on behaviour change. In particular, thank you to Graham Nicholas, who we've been working with, senior social scientist we've been working with there. So looking at our key messages for today, these are really what I kind of want you to take away from today's talk. So we have the power to make the change. We know what's causing our problem, and so we have the ability to do something about it. It gives us a lot of power. Regulation alone is not going to get us there. We've now got regulation in place, but we know that it's going to take a long time for that regulation to take effect. And finally, access to information doesn't necessarily equal behaviour change, and we'll touch a little bit more on that shortly. So we'll start with a little bit of background. In New Zealand, there are national regulations to look after air quality, so that's national environmental standards for air quality. And implementing those standards is the responsibility of regional councils and unitary authorities. Those standards are health-based, and as many of you will know, poor air quality contributes to a wide variety of adverse health effects. Today I'm focusing on particulate matter, small droplets, particles, solid and liquid particles in the air, and more specifically we're talking about PM10 today, so particles smaller than 10 microns in diameter. Adverse health effects most commonly associated with particulate matter include effects on respiratory system, so most common impact is on people with existing respiratory conditions, so asthma or COPD. High particulate concentrations also have an effect on people with cardiovascular disease and can contribute to cardiovascular disease, so poor air quality puts increased stress on the cardiovascular system and makes it, for most people, they probably only notice this, maybe a little bit of irritation breathing through their nose, their eyes, or maybe even just a smell or the visibility of it in the air. But we know all this information. It's been well established through epidemiological studies. And so what we needed to know through this process was where our particulate matter was coming from. And the focus of today's work is actually on the Invercargill area, but some of this has also been carried out within Gore as well. So to start off with, we will take a little bit of a look at the work completed, emission inventory work completed by Environet. And so this work looked at the human-caused sources of air pollution, human-caused because that's something we have the ability to control. Method involved telephone survey, look at census data, review of local transport use, and then emission factors were applied to the respective sources. So within domestic heating there, for example, we've got wood burners, multi-fuel burners, pellet burners, oil and gas, and each of those will emit different amounts of particulate matter. So multi-fuel burners, for example, will emit more particulate matter per kilogram of fuel burnt than a wood burner. And this information gave us an estimate of the pollution discharged on an average winter's night. And what we then needed to know was how that matched up with what we were actually receiving at our monitoring site. So we can see here that domestic heating is our highest contributor in terms of what's being emitted. So we'll move to have a look at what we're actually measuring at the site, and that's where the work from GNS comes in. And this was source characterisation work, took hourly samples of fine particulate matter, so PM2.5, and coarse particulate matter, which is the fraction from 10 to 2.5, and that was over a 3-month period from June to August. Samples were then sent away and analysed in GNS's ion beam analysis lab in Lower Hutt, and that's where we found the elemental concentrations of the particulate matter. So we found the main source here was biomass combustion, can be seen in the black. In other words, we're talking domestic heating and outdoor burning as our main contributor. So that aligns very closely with the emission inventory work that we had completed looking at the discharges. And we can also see through here the natural source contributions. So that's a question we often get asked is what about natural? We can see here natural in the source in the form of soil and marine aerosol, and it's relatively low compared to the other sources we're seeing. There's also a little bit of transport emissions, and you may be able to see there's a slight increase in the early sort of morning period there. So with all that information, we then put that into our regional air plan review, so it fed into that review and gave us allowed us to introduce regulations which became operative in 2016. Those regulations address domestic heating and outdoor burning, and alongside that we developed the Breathe Easy Southland resources. So those resources included the website, which you can see has a lot of information there, and we also did a pamphlet drops providing all that information to the public. So there was plenty of information available for people on that topic. Now, we knew that the phase-out regulations within that plan were going to take quite some time to be effective, so we began to explore burner behaviour and what we might be able to do to speed that process up and engage with people and influence the decisions they make in their home. So we introduced the Good Wood scheme and emphasised the importance of good burning practice within our messaging. And that's about that time that we had the opportunity to work with ESR on our pilot project. So pilot project, the aim of which is to help us understand the determinants of behaviours and policies that influence air quality. And the idea is that knowledge gained from this project will feed into the development of a platform that will be able to engage with the public on a range of different issues, but beginning with the air quality. So the project's still underway, we've still got work to be done on this. What we've done so far is to workshop the issue with organisations that work with community groups in the South Invercargill area. And one of the questions that was asked was what values or beliefs might be influencing people's attitudes and practices towards air quality. And so that's some of the responses you're seeing here. And you might see that some of these responses are quite sort of inward facing. So we're incorporating developmental evaluation into this project and using the feedback received through this to guide our next steps. And we are planning to use the knowledge gained here to frame up our discussions with the next level down, if you like, to go to a community group and household level. Moving into conclusions. So again, bringing back that key message, we know what the source of our problem is. We've established that through our emission inventory and characterisation. We know that regulation is going to be slow and it needs to be coupled with engagement with the community. and a change in the way people think about air quality and how they heat their own homes. And we are beginning to understand, or gain a deeper understanding, of how the community thinks about air quality and what their role might be in addressing the issue. So to finish up with some questions that we're still yet to answer on this theme, behavioural change, we are asking the question of how we get individuals to consider others. You saw some of those comments were quite what's in it for me approach. We also need to understand what will motivate people to make a change, and the last point that we've got is whether or not this project is going to be universally applicable to other topics that we deal with as a council. Cool, thank you.
Environment